as to which ones of those, it says which ones are exponential. Do you have any idea which ones would be exponential?
C.
C? Actually, C is a no. And let's talk about why C is a no. In order to be an exponential function, the x has to be in the exponent. So in problem number C, the exponent is not an x, the exponent is a 2. That's called a power function. You're raising x to a power. It's not an exponential function. So we're on our note sheets. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. What? Honey, I just handed you a packet of them.
No, I don't think this is. Oh, yeah, it is. Sorry.
What are they?
Okay. All right. So, having said that C is a no, because x, to be exponential, x has to be in the exponent, what would you say about A?
Yes.
It's a yes. Now let's answer the rest of the questions. State if they are growth or decay, state the rate of growth or decay, and state the initial value. So for problem A, you are going to have 4 different answers. So yes, it is exponential. Then it says, is it growth or decay? So we're going to circle one of these. Which one is it, growth or decay? Do you want to take a wild guess when you look at problem A?
Growth.
Why did you say growth?
Positive.
Actually, no. But that's a very good thought. We are multiplying by 1.23. Now, what happens to a number if you multiply it by 1.23? It goes up. And when things go up, we say that is growing. So the key isn't positive or negative. The key is, what am I multiplying by? Is it more than 1? If what I am multiplying by is more than 1, and I'm talking about the base of the exponent, I'm talking about the thing in parentheses. If it's more than 1, you are growth. Because if you multiply by 1 point something, you're going to get bigger. What if you multiply by 0.5? You get smaller. That would be decay. So if the number that's the base of the x, if the thing the x is on is bigger than 1, you're growth. If it's less than 1, you are decay. Okay? So problem A is a growth problem. All right? Now you need to state the rate of growth or decay. So that's going to be a percentage. How much is this thing growing? Anybody want to take a guess? 23%. It's a 23% growth. Now, why is it a 23% growth? Because 1.23, Paul, you said, is bigger than 1. How much bigger than 1? 0.23 bigger than 1. And how much bigger than 1 you are is your growth rate. So if you multiply by 1.15, it would be 15%. So the amount that you are bigger than 1 is your growth. The amount that you are less than 1 is your decay. So the key is 1. You're either going to be bigger than 1, that's growth, and however much you're bigger than 1, that's your percent. If you're less than 1, you're decay, and however much less than 1 you are is your rate of decay, your percentage. Okay? And then the initial value. Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about the 1.23. See that little 3 out there in front? That's your beginning value. That's your initial value. So we're starting with 3, and we're going to multiply it by 1.23, and by another 1.23. And we just keep multiplying it by 1.23, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. All right, let's look at number 2, or B, letter B. All right, first of all, question number 1, is it exponential? Yes. Because why? X in the exponent. Easy. Okay. Now, is it growth or decay? Look at what's in that parentheses. This is a decay problem. And it's decay because we're multiplying by 0.83, which is less than 1. And Ethan just said the rate of decay is 17%. And he is on target because he was listening when Miss Ford said that your rate of growth is how much more than 1 you are, and your rate of decay is how much less than 1 you are. So how much less than 1 is 0.83, 0.17. That's a 17% decay. Very good, Ethan. What's the initial value in letter B? 1/2. That guy out in front is your initial value every single time. That's what you're starting with before you start multiplying. All right, C we already said was a no, so there are no other questions. It's a no, and we move on. All right, D, here we go. Exponential. Yes. Right, everyone? X is in the exponent. Okay, growth or decay? Growth, because we are multiplying by a number bigger than 1. The number that's the base of the x, 1.02, is bigger than 1. What is your rate of growth or decay? 2%. You're 0.02 bigger than 1, so you're a 2% growth rate. And your initial value? 100. Very good. E, tricky question. You think easy, yes or a no? It's actually a no. And to be exponential, you have to be a number raised to the x power. This is a trick question. I'm just tricky. You can't have x, you can have x to the x, but it's not exponential. It has to be a number to the x. All right, and finally F. Exponential? Yes, because we have a number to the xth power. Would you say growth or decay? That's a decay problem. Because what's the base of the x? 0.92, and 0.92 is less than 1. What's your rate of decay?
8%.
8%. How much less than 1 is 0.92? 0.08. That's 8%. So it's an 8% decay, and your initial value is 3.6. Okay, so next time I see you, if I were to throw one of these at you as a quiz, everybody would get all those parts right. Right? Got it? Okay. Now part 2, a little bit harder. Write the equation of the exponential function given these points. Now, an exponential function looks like this. Now, before you get confused, because I put letters in there, just back up. Look at letter F. Letter F was 3.6 times 0.92 to the x, right? That's exponential. This is just kind of a general form for being exponential. A and B are some numbers, right? And more specifically, what's A? What did we call that 3.6? What was it in letter F? The initial value. So this guy right here is your initial value. Every time. Every time, that's your initial value. Okay? Now, this is what they gave me. I'm going to start with the point that has a 0 in it. And would you agree that's x and y?
Yes.
So I'm going to take this general format right here, and I'm going to put in 2 for my y, and I'm going to put in 0 for my x. Now, at first glance, that might scare me, but then I noticed something. B to the 0. What is anything to the 0 power? 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. I'll say it again. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So when I say b to the 0, that's like 1.
2.
So what does that tell me? A is 2? So go back, this is what I'm trying to figure out right here. But now I know A is 2. And how did I get that? I plugged in that point right there. Now, how do you think I'm going to figure out B?
The
I don't know
second
what B
point.
is. What?
Plug in the second point.
Plug in the second point. So I know that A is 2. I figured that out by plugging in the point that had a 0. So now I'm going to plug in this other point. 6 goes in for Y, and 1 goes in for X. Can I figure out what B is? What is B? Divide by 2. B to the first, doesn't that just mean B? So B is 3. And my answer is Y equals 2 times 3 to the X. Now, there will be someone in this room who tries to multiply the 2 and the 3 together. And I will get out my pen and no, you cannot multiply the 2 and the 3. The A and the B are 2 separate numbers. They cannot be put together ever. So the answer is 2 times 3 to the X. Okay? Now, I bet there's another example just like that. Oh golly, there's 3 more examples just like that. All right, let's give it a shot to see how we do. We are shooting, don't even act like you're bored, people, come on. Is it an emergency? All right, hurry up. And when you get back, you're gonna sit up straight.
Yep.
That's our deal. Okay. I'm trying to find Y equals A times B to the X. So look at the given. We have 0, 1/2, and 2/8. Who remembers how to start? It's exactly like the last one. Deshani?
You plug in the first one.
And the point I always start with is the point that has a 0. Always start with the point that has the 0. So in I'm going to put 1/2 for the Y and 0 for the X. And why is this so exciting? Why am I so happy about this? Because B to the 0 is going to turn out to be 1 all the time. So doesn't this just say A is 1/2?
So we should always start with the one that has a 0.
Always start with the one that has a 0. Always. It makes your life so much easier.
But you are able to do it the other way.
What?
But you are able to do it the other way.
Yeah, yours is harder. So we have Y equals 1/2 B to the X. That's where I am so far. Remember, this was my goal, but I just figured out that A was 1/2, so I can plug that in. A is 1/2. So now I have this. So what do I do now? Plug in the second point, which doesn't have a 0. Plug that one in. So 8 equals 1/2 B to the second. I put in 8 for Y and 2 for X. All right, now you have to solve that though. How do you think we might do that? Divide by 1/2, which is the same as timesing by 2. Might be easier to multiply both sides by 2. So if we multiply both sides by 2, we have 16 equals B squared. And then B equals 4. Now, don't get so excited, kids, that you forget to write the equation. That was our job. So the answer is Y equals 1/2 times 4 to the X. And are you going to multiply the 1/2 and the 4?
No.
Never, ever, 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 ever. All right, I'll do one more, and then I'll let you try one on your own. Let's do one more together. then we'll do that last one on our own. So, here we go. We're shooting for an exponential, so y equals a times b to the x is my goal. Step 1.
Plug in point.
Start with the point 0, 6. In this problem, it's 0, 6. So 6 equals a times b to the 0. Why did I put the 6 here? Because it's y, right? Paul?
So won't A always be X?
Well, it'll always be the y value. Yep, it will always turn out to be that number. Yep. So Paul says, hey, look, every time it just turns out to be that number. So could I skip this step if I remembered that? Sure. Sure, if you remember that, you can skip it. It's always going to work. So we have 6b to the x. That's the equation we have now. Okay, so what happens now? Plug in the other point, which is 3/8 equals 6b to the 4th. Uh-oh, 4th. Well, you could. What are you going to do after this, though? If you do that, what would you do next? Divide by 48. So we have 3 48s. We have to get b by itself. So you could either divide by 6, but since that's a fraction, you may not want to do that. So times it by 8 wasn't bad, but then you got to divide by 48. We've got to get to this point. That's 1/16. That reduces. 1/16 equals b to the 4th. How do we figure out b? Because we really want to know what b is. Well, we wouldn't square root. We would have to 4th root both sides. Because what happens when you 4th root b to the 4th? You just get b, don't you?
Yeah.
Now, what's the 4th root of 1/16? 1/2. Kids, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16, right? The 4th root of 16 is 2. Very good.
Don't get too excited till we answer.
Don't get too excited till we write our answer. You're right, Chris. Y equals 6 times 1/2 to the x.
Why did you give D to us? You lost.
Why did it what?
Give D to us on our
Yeah, can we do that together
That's
maybe?
what
Well, are we freaked out because we got these
Whoa.
horrible numbers?
Time out.
Oh, come on.
That's childish.
You guys are tougher than that.
Are we?
At least you can find A.
I'm tough, but this
You
problem
all can
is
find A. What's A? 10, yeah, we can do that. So 10 equals A. Alright, so you've got this equation. Y equals 10 b to the x. Alright, so now what? Now we're going to plug in that crazy point. So 80/27 equals 10b to the 3rd. Now, you have to get b by itself. So you can do what we did last time. You can go ahead and multiply the 27 over here, but then you're going to have to turn around and divide, right?
Yeah.
Or you can just straight up divide at this point. I know it's a fraction. Remember though, dividing by 10 is the same as timesing by 1/10.
Yeah.
So if it makes sense to you to multiply by 1/10 instead of dividing by 10, you can do that. So b cubed, this is gone, so b cubed ends up being 8/27. 10 goes into 80 8 times, 8/27. Now what do I need to do to figure out b? cube root. You gotta do what I did over here, only this is a cube root. So I'm gonna cube root both sides. So that's just plain b. The cube root of b cubed is just b. What's the cube root of 8/27? 2/3. When you take the cube root of a fraction, or the square root, any root of a fraction, do the top and the bottom separately. So what's the cube root of 8? 2. What's the cube root of 27? 3. So the answer is 2/3. So y equals 10 times 2/3 to the x. Okay, we're going to do a few more and then we're going to be done. I've got something really important to tell you now. I think you know this already, but I want to tell you again. Look at problem 3A. That is just a fancy way of writing 8 to the 1/3 is just a fancy way of writing the cube root of 8. When you have an exponent that is a fraction, a fractional exponent, it represents a radical. And the denominator of the fraction tells you which root you're taking. So if it's a 1/3, it's going to be a cube root. If it were a 1/2, it would be a square root. A 1/5 would be a 5th root. So then you can evaluate this. This is going to be a no calculator question. I'm not going to allow you to have any calculator to do this. The cube root of 8 is 2. You need to know that 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2. Now what about number B, or letter B? That is also 2 because it means the 4th root of 16. And that means what times itself 4 times gives you 16. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So the answer is 2. Quincy? Okay, C is next. We're going to do C right now. 8 to the 2/3. Now I have already told you that the denominator of the fraction tells me I'm taking a cube root. So this is the cube root of 8 squared. So the numerator gives you a power. What are you doing?
You got some stuck in his head.
Oh, okay.
Looked weirder than it was, but I just didn't get it out.
Okay. So the cube root of 8, what's the cube root of 8? 2 squared is 4. So the answer to the problem is 4. The denominator tells you which root to take. So as soon as I see this in the denominator, I think the cube root of 8. But then that 2 tells me that I need to square it. Up here I didn't do that because this was the cube root of 8 to the 1st. So there wasn't any squaring or anything to do. All right, now we have 16 to the 3/4. 16 to the 3/4. All right, now slow down. The denominator tells you which root to take. So this is going to be the 4th root of 16. Would everybody agree with that? And once you figure out the 4th root of 16, you're going to cube it. So what is the 4th root of 16? 2, and 2 cubed is 8. So the answer to the problem is 8. 8 to the 4/3. Those of you that said 16, you've got this figured out. It's the cube root of 8, the cube root of 8, which is 2, raised to the 4th power. So 2 to the 4th is 16. Very, very good. All right, F, 16 to the 3/2.
6/4.
All right, so what does that mean, 16 to the 3/2? It means the square root of 16 and then to the third. So what's the square root of 16? 4. And 4 cubed, you may have to work that out, is 64. Nine to the 3/2. 9 to the 3/2 means the square root of 9 cubed. So the square root of 9 is 3, and 3 cubed is 27. Perfect. One more. 25 to the 1/2.
5.
It means the square root of 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. Very, very good. All right, I'm going to see you again on Wednesday? Listen, so on Wednesday, we're going to have a little quizzy poo.
Quizzy poo,
And the
quizzy
quizzy
poo.
poo is going to have 3 problems on it. One like section 1, one like section 2, one like section 3. We'll do a quick review, but only a real quickie, and then take a quiz. Remember, you can start bringing